Hi, everybody. I guess I'll put this closer. I've had enough bad audio problems this week, but welcome back to the channel. It is Monday. It's 10 past 8 as I'm recording this. It's May 12th. It's my son's birthday. My youngest son is 15 years old now. I hope you all had a good Mother's Day. I had a great weekend, tons of fun. I met Mark Nixon and Clyde, and we did a little interview, and it was dark and you couldn't hear us. But I thank you all for putting up with me. Listen, today I wanted to talk. I always talk in my videos about cultivating oil and gas. I've been saying that for a couple of years because we all know that, we could be, like, Saudi Arabia or Qatar. We've got the LNG, but there are forces at play that are putting us down. And as Canadians, I think we've put up with it and put up with it and put up with it. And now we just go, we ain't playing this game anymore. And by the way, I want to say, if you're new to my channel, I was a mainstream media newscast director. I worked for Global News for many, many years, over 20 years. And then they fired me when I started to ask them why we were not reporting true facts about COVID and the pandemic. And now everybody seems to know the mainstream media lies, but they still go on. Yet they still go on. These buggers. Okay, I did a bit on Sky News like a couple of weeks ago now, and I talked about Mark Carney. They brought me on to talk about him, particularly as a net zero zealot. And I'm going to get to that. But first, Danielle Smith, God bless her. She had this to say. She is going toe to toe with Carney, and she is the one fighting the good fight here. Alberta government announces indefinite freeze on industrial carbon price. What they wanted to do, they wanted to hike it up to $110 per ton of emission in 2026. And then after that, hike it up to $170 in 2030. So she had something to say about it.
And what we have heard from industry is that any further increases to the industrial carbon tax past $100 per ton would be detrimental to their businesses and would diminish their competitiveness in the market. That's why today we're announcing that effective immediately, Alberta is freezing the industrial carbon tax under Alberta's Technology and Innovation Emissions Reduction System, or TIER, at $95 per ton of emissions.
What do these Carney types want us to do? I mean, think about what you need energy for. You generate electricity for homes, for business, for industry. You fuel vehicles. You have gasoline. You have diesel for cars, for trucks, for ships, for planes. What else? You power furnaces, for goodness sake. You produce goods, you refine chemicals, cooking, you have stoves, you have heaters, you create plastics, fertilizer, synthetic materials, other kinds of synthetic oils. Like this is how the world works. I'll show you some clips this is from 3 years ago of Mr. Carney, and the things that he's talking about, it's actually a little bit terrifying, to be honest.
The financial system. We've changed the plumbing, if you will, the financial system. A bunch of very worthy reforms that actually, to be honest, only the audience at Bloomberg would fully understand and appreciate, and we can go through them for the next hour. But, think mandatory disclosure, think stress testing, all that. So part of it is retooling, but then it's also about financial institutions stepping up and saying that they are going to finance this transition, this enormous $100 trillion transition that needs to happen over the next 3 decades. They're going to finance it, and they're going to mark their own homework. They're going to show up year in, year out, say what their emissions are of their clients, have specific strategies for reducing carbon, fair share of 50% down by 2030. That's what the Glasgow Financial Alliance is all about.
Why not stop actually putting money into fossil fuel, full stop, instead of talking about the transition?
Well, we're living through problems with the transition right now in terms of we have both far too many fossil fuels in the world. We're going to have enormous stranded assets, half of gas, 3/4 of coal, etc. Maybe up as much as half of oil reserves, proven reserves, need to stay in the ground if we're going to get to where we are. But we also have local short-term shortages of some of those exact materials. We're here in the UK, there's a shortage of the storage of gas. So there needs to be only some limited financing for a transition. but only for a transition, which is why you need things like GFANs that are relentlessly, ruthlessly, absolutely focused on that transition to net zero, and not just any transition, a 1.5 degree transition, which, sorry if I may, which is what G20 leaders signed off on yesterday.
But the G20 leaders didn't stop, for example, coal from being used domestically.
Yeah.
And so we're doing progress, but we're going at it slowly.
Well, we're doing progress. We need to accelerate it. Some of those, there's a different timeline for fully ending coal. We want to stop coal, not just new coal, but stop use of coal by 2030 in the advanced economies. That's what Powering Past Coal, which is a big element of COP26, is about. But also by the end of the next decade in the emerging developing world. And if I may, again, to bring it back to finance, to give them the confidence to do that, they need to see literally a wall of money that's available for their transition. So when they're building up alternative energy, that the money is going to be there.
I mean, they want the financial institutions to mark their own homework so that they can get carbon credits, so that they're not emitting too much, because too much is no good. I mean, that's having complete control over banks and financial institutions and how they finance the companies, like what makes the world go round. And you can see in that video, the host is like, why don't you just stop this altogether? And right now, is she thinking, like, does she sit in a car? Does she sit on a train? Has she been on a ferry? What do you think? This is, you want to then lock yourself up in your home? They trained you already for that. This is happening right in front of all of us. In my neighborhood, I'm seeing businesses and banks close all over the place. It literally is happening. People are getting laid off. People cannot find other jobs. And the economy is being crushed around you. Yet this is the guy that was going to go handle Trump. And before I move on, the GFANs is the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. And the co-chair of that is Michael Bloomberg. I mean, the friends in high places. So Carney saying stuff like this, I mean, it's clear how he feels. You know, it's like, if he wants you to not heat your home a certain way and you put in a heat pump, you know, his wife is all cuckoo bananas for heat pumps. She's like, every home should have a heat pump. I heard her say that on some podcast she was being interviewed somewhere. And I believe that he has companies that invest in heat pumps, you know, and other things like that. They want to change how you do everything to suit them, but almost to make you vulnerable, so you have no autonomy. When he signed away the consumer carbon tax, mind you, my gas price is still $1.73, and it only went down a little bit just right before the election, right before people started voting. I saw that it was like $1.50, and he knew to do that. Do you think he wanted to do that? He knew to do that because it's like people would it's psychological. And it was actually Polyev. He was right about this.
Carbon tax con job. They collect the tax for 7 years, pass a law to raise it 300% by 2030, and then, a few weeks before the election, they hide it from sight, all to try and win a fourth Liberal term in power. The full carbon tax, which lets them keep the tax and raise the tax, remains in place today, even after Mark Carney trying to hide the tax just a few days ago. That law would raise the tax yearly until it hits 61 cents a liter in 2030. All the Liberals will have to do is flip the on switch to put the tax back on gas, heat, farmers, and others. If they really planned to get rid of the tax, they would have recalled Parliament and repealed the carbon tax law for real.
Everybody that voted for more of this just literally had the wool pulled over their eyes. They had the ultimate TDS. The number one thing, according to an Abacus poll, and I'm not really into polls very much because I don't know exactly who they all polled, but 49% of voters over 55 voted for Carney because their main priority was dealing with Trump. And then Carney goes in there and he goes over to Trump and he calls him a transformational president. You're trying to get rid of the scourge of fentanyl. You're there for the American worker. He says all the right things to your face. And he knows he knows when to keep his mouth shut too. And we are completely duped. I mean, this guy he wants it all in the ground. And then what do we do in the meantime if you live in Edmonton in the winter? Oh, this was quite interesting, this announcement.
I said before in our meeting with the new and very talented Prime Minister of Canada.
Very talented.
That we have some very big announcement to make. It's not about trade, it's about something else, but it's going to be a truly earth-shattering and positive development for this country and for the people of this country. And that'll take place sometime within the next few days.
So I'm most intrigued as to what that is. Another thing about Carney, though, you can see, because that video, oh, I look like a mess today. Another thing about Carney in that interview, the COP26 interview, you can see the reporter is just really on board with him. You know, she's not challenging things she's saying. She's almost reveling in his grandeur, you know, and he's quite used to that. And that's why he's testy, with not just with alternative media, but with legacy media. You know, he kind of doesn't like the questioning when he's not used to being questioned like that. So this is Steve Bannon. He had quite an interesting take.
Harder questions is Mark Carney's just been elected in Canada. Is this a victory for the globalists?
You know, Mark Carney's the classic Goldman Sachs guy, right? Flits around country to country, you know, from England to Canada. I think it's not, I don't think, look, it's a victory for the globalists. I think, and look, President Trump may have been gaming the system. I just look at it as a lack of reality of the Canadian people. The Canadian people have a crisis that they're going to have to address. Number one, besides the break-off provinces in Alberta and Saskatchewan, others that are resource rich and are not happy with the current arrangements, it's really about the situation, about the integrated economy of the United States and what's really going to happen with tariffs and trades and bringing things back, particularly so much of the automotive industry they have. They shouldn't assume that that's going to be there forever. They just shouldn't. Number two, and I think more importantly, to avoid in the Arctic, the new great game, right? The new power struggle of the great game of the 21st century. They should be very concerned vis-a-vis Russia and the Chinese Communist Party that they're not the next Ukraine. They are going to have a territorial, I think, movement by the Chinese Communist Party, at least, into their northern territories of the Arctic. Right now, they're in a dominion status or aligned with the English-speaking countries of the British Empire. There's no money there to defend anybody. Britain can't defend itself. And so they're going to have to make a decision over the next couple of years. Mark Carney's the typical kind of glad-handing globalist that just gives you more of the happy talk. So the people of Canada, look, they made their decision, and we'll see how it played out. You should understand also when we talk about a populist nationalist movement that's expanding all the time with Bolsonaro in Brazil and Orban in Hungary and Nigel Farage in the United Kingdom and Alternative for Deutschland, Pierre is not really a populist. He's a career politician. He trash talked Trump. He's never a guy anybody's ever asked for to come to CPAC. I've never had him on the show. I've never had anybody come to me from Canada and say, you got to get this. He's kind of a phony populist, right? He even lost his own district. So I think in Canada, it's a situation that Canadian people are saying, hey, what's this new relationship with Canada? Why is Trump all over us? I think it's a reaction to that. But I believe that you're going to see over the next couple of years a further rejection of the Trudeau-type policies that Mark Carney, and Carney's your classic, Goldman Sachs globalist glad-hander. Yeah, that's not going to be able to make decisions. So we'll have to see. But I would keep an eye on two things. Number one, Alberta and Saskatchewan. I just don't think those Western provinces, those Western territories, there's something's going to happen internally to Canada. And number two, this Arctic great game is something they got to pay attention to. The prime minister, the premier of China came 10 years ago or 15 years ago in 2010 to Canada and said, hey, we're an Arctic power and you guys better get a heads up. I think the Canadians have their heads in the sand for the territorial integrity of themselves in the Arctic.
I thought that was a very interesting take. I mean, I like him or don't like him, but he's right about Saskatchewan. He's kind of he knows what's going on with Pierre losing his riding. For Canada, nobody ever looks at us, and now people are looking at us. People are like, Trump is smelling something cooking up here and he wants it. In the world of acquisition, you'd come for us. Like something is going to happen internally in Canada. I mean, that's pretty, the thing I find interesting when Americans talk about us, because no one ever talks about us. Now people are talking about us. He's quite in tune with what's going on up here. So, and now we're at the point where it's like, hey, people can't take it anymore. The economy and the struggle is that real. And now people are waking up and everybody's waking up. This is the great awakening. Anyway, let me know your thoughts and what you think. Thank you so much for spending time with me tonight and watching this video. If you like what I'm up to, please subscribe. Please come on back. And we'll catch you in the next video.